Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 89. We're back. I mean, it's been about a month, I think, or maybe 6 weeks since I recorded an episode. Things have been really busy here in Mannheim. A lot of games in a short amount of time due to the Olympic year. We've been all over the map. So happy to say I'm back now. We're going to get some episodes going out here, and no better one to start with than our next guest here. This guy is from the Toronto area, another goalie. So, as we know on this podcast, love to talk to the goalies, obviously, smartest guys on the ice. I actually grew up training with this guy. So, he was a couple years older than me when I came to the goalie school that we both went to. He had already played in the OHL, won a Memorial Cup, and was starting his pro journey. And I was, trying to get drafted, all that stuff. So a great mentor to me, someone I learned from, how to work every day on the ice, which obviously for my career was much needed. I didn't have the talent that a lot of guys did. I needed to work hard to get to what I got. But he, as I mentioned, won a Memorial Cup in the OHL, was drafted in the NHL, played 3 years in the American League before heading to Europe, where he played both in Italy and in Germany, and played for the Italian national team before ending it in the Austrian League. And then after that, he does what everyone else wants to do. He wants to stay involved in hockey, which I think is great. Goes on to get a job with the OHL, and then gets in with an organization, the North Bay Battalion, as an assistant coach, assistant GM, goalie coach. Then gets promoted to general manager and now is president and director of hockey operations. So lots to talk about with this next guest. Happy to have him on. Welcome to the Pro Hockey Pod, Adam Dennis.
Wow, thanks so much. Was that a Servus that you started the podcast with? It's a flashback, but no, thanks so much for having me. It's cool. You go through a career and you don't really often have time to reflect. So it's appreciate the update and yeah, it's some fond memories being on the ice with you. So it's great to catch up.
Yeah, this will definitely be a trip down memory lane. I can promise you that. But I always like to go back to the beginning. So as I said, I believe you grew up in the Toronto area there. Like, what's kind of the earliest childhood memory you have growing up there?
Yeah, so I mean, it just hockey is probably at the forefront of most of my memories. You know, I come from a very strong hockey family. I have some older cousins that played. My cousin Chris is actually currently with the Winnipeg Jets as a scout. He's coached in the league in various positions as well. My cousin Steve was committed to, he went to Miami of Ohio. So I always had that, that really cool mentors, the cool group of mentors myself that I was able to, kind of follow their path. Rink rat for sure, always running around the rinks, grabbing pucks. And my dad, he very supportive, never really put pressure. He would coach me as a younger kid, but always just, somebody that would bring me to the rink. And what color Powerade was really the only questions that I got after games. So grew up kind of just obsessed with the game. I would have played mini sticks at recess, like most of the young kids, and really from a young age, probably not too different than a lot of those kids that when you're asked what do you want to do as a career, I said, well, I'm going to be a hockey player, and it kind of started, and I'm happy to say that I've been able to, call it a career ever since.
One important question I like to ask, a fellow goalie, we all have our stories or reasons of why we became a goalie. So, Adam, obviously, I'm curious, like, what made you want to become a goalie?
Yeah, so a lot of pushback from mom and dad for sure, which I think is also what most goalies have to contend with. But for me, it was, it started with that first tryout, and we all play house league, and you rotate in net. The select group was a year away, so I was a year younger. But my dad said, "Why don't we bring him out anyways?" Went to the tryout as a player, was close, but coach actually approached my dad and said that, we did see Adam play goalie in his rotation and he was pretty good. We only have one goalie. What do you think if he joined our team as a goalie? So my dad worked it out with the coaches that we would do it, but only under the understanding that in the games that I wasn't playing goalie, I could play as a player. So I spent that year kind of platooning back and forth from goal scorer to puck stopper, and I wish that there was an opportunity for more young goalies to get that approach to the game. I think it gives you great perspective. I think it helps with your skating, and that option wasn't there the next year. The whole team moved up to Double A with the Humber Valley Sharks, and I came with them as a full-time goalie at that point. And the rest, as they say, is history. I won't lie. There was times, like most goalies throughout their career, that I would have loved to go back and be a goal scoring forward. But I really think that after a full career, there is something special about being a goalie. I think that you deal with a lot of adversity and you're prepared for a lot of the things that life throws at you after. So grateful, got through it. Would be lying if I could say there wasn't a lot of survival through that career and a lot of mental ups and downs, but it's a very unique position, and that's how I started, and I didn't look back.
Very unique position. As you mentioned, the mental grind is it's a crazy roller coaster ride at times. And it's funny, we have the kind of the same thing happen to me growing up. Like I was a AAA player defenseman and for whatever reason I had a fascination with being a goalie. And I remember my parents being like, you gotta be this age and are you sure you want to do this? And the next year I got cut to double A because they didn't need a goalie. And it was the same thing like you. Like one game I'd be playing net, the next game I was playing D and actually leading the team in points. So it was like you had that ability, and I think it helped me, and you might agree to this, like, especially for our movement abilities, skating abilities, and also puck handling abilities, like down the road, because we weren't just traditional goalie skaters, like we could be diverse or whatever with that. So it helped us get out of the net and move around quicker. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah, and I just think that like even in my current job, like I feel like I have an advantage just the release of shots, like the deceit when you're trying to hide a shot, some things like that. But I think just the perspective, like being on the other side of a 2-on-1, I think it's great to look at a goalie and what he's given up. And I thought that perspective was huge. Just to, some of the best advice I was given was by Jim Corsi. And it was just about goaltending as a whole. And he said, goalie is a hockey player. You just have a different position and you wear different equipment, but you still have to be a hockey player. And I think now more than anything, it's something that I really will look for in our goalies is that ability to read plays and just understanding of the game a bit.
And as you know, when you're young goalies, like I think the big influence of having these goalie schools or goalie coaches is crucial for your development as a goalie. Like there's so much to learn about the position, whether it's the technical stuff, reading plays, athleticism, you name it. Obviously, we met through David Franco Canadian Goalie School, but I was wondering, like, when you were growing up, was there other goalie schools you might have started with, or like, how was it for you?
For sure. And you know what? Like, again, my parents were wonderful with providing opportunities for me. And, I'm now seeing it with my son. And they always kind of let me do the leading. If I wanted to go, they would take me. And I thought that was really important. I was never pushed into anything of the extra stuff. It was always based on me wanting to get better. And so yeah, with that in mind, I went through kind of I've probably been to most goalie coaches in Toronto in the younger ages. I certainly would say that John Elkins goalie school was one that I went to as a younger kid and I thought did a lot in providing me with, the edge work, some things like that. I used Steve Davies for quite a bit when I was coming up, and I really think Steve is one of the best at just that understanding of the position. There's lots of different ways to stop a puck, but just understanding the game is I thought that's something that he really brought to my game. And then the Franco brothers, that's where that was my final landing spot, and really at that point. I feel like that relationship is so important, and those guys were just able to get so much out of me on the ice, whether I was, having a down day, an up day, it didn't matter. You always left the session kind of feeling like you got it out of your system and you got a little bit better. And they have a way about their dressing room that makes you feel like you're a part of the team when you are training to be in an isolated position. And I thought that was always nice. And a case in point, the fact that we get to still talk like this. Rob Zepp, actually, we drafted his son last year, so I've been able to connect with Zepper, and he was that for me. He was a couple years older, and always that guy that I always tried to steal a little bit from. And if he was out there, I didn't want to be late. I knew I was always trying to make sure that I wasn't ruining his ice session. And I think that everybody needs somebody like that to kind of push themselves. But the Francos have been wonderful for me, and I'd say, if anything else, they're amazing friends right now, and I'd recommend any young goalie to give them a shot for sure. But it's funny, the position, it's no one goalie plays the same, right? So I think it is important to see a different perspectives. And ultimately, when you find that one that works for you, it really is just about tweaking. So you need that really strong relationship, I think, which the Francos provided me.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, like I think every goalie coach or goalie school has their advantages of things that they've been able to specialize in. Like Elkin at a young age, I was there too, and it really laid the foundation. And then I felt when I went to Dave and Marco eventually, and then they were my last goalie coaches as well, that yeah, like not every day was the easiest. You know, you'd have some battles with them, but it was like you said, you felt like kind of that dressing room mentality every day. You felt leaving, you know, you had got something out of it. And like just to talk about our group, like at the my first year, I think we had Cujo was still playing. It was Zepp, it was Stores, Jamie Store, it was you. And then you had like me, which would I've been maybe 17, 18. And then you even had like Binnington, who was like 14 at the time, right? So like we had those training groups and stuff. And that was obviously a lot of fun there. But back to your career. So you end up, and this is one of the things that I think was pretty common during your career was, you know, the motivation and kind of battling through adversity, which I mean, every athlete goes through it, but we're going to start with yours. So you get drafted to the OHL in the 14th round to the Guelph Storm. Now, many listeners out there listening will go, you know, how many rounds is there? And I believe, I believe back then it was still 15. Like when I got drafted, it was 15. But like as a goalie to get drafted that late, a lot of, or even a player, a lot of players at that time would say, you know what, like this route might not be for me. Like it's a long shot. Maybe I should focus on the NCAA route, or maybe I should focus on something else. But correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you took it as motivation to the point where, you know, the next year you end up playing Tier 2 Junior A in Oakville with former guest TJ Manisterski, I might say.
Okay.
And then within a year from being a 14th round draft pick, you end up making the OHL, which, you know, at that time was probably very uncommon for those late rounders. Like just maybe talk about your mentality, you know, battling and just wanting to obviously, you know, get better and make the team.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I was pissed. I thought that I had a really good year. I had about like 8 or 10 shutouts. Our team was one of the better teams in the league. And to be honest with you, I think it's been something that's been a necessary evil for me in my career is that motivation. And I went through it. For a little while, I probably said that I was not going to go to the OHL. And that's probably why I would have been taken in the 14th round. But everything happens for a reason. And for me, I kind of was able to create a little bit of a hit list of all those goalies that got drafted ahead of me. And it was kind of cool because in Guelph, I was the 14th round pick, which the only downside to that was that the 15th round pick kind of stole my thunder as the late round steal because the 15th round pick was Ryan Callahan, who ended up being captain of the New York Rangers. And they ended up putting us together in a billet house, and it was right across the street from the Guelph Dominators Junior B rink. So we both kind of were joking and like, that's probably not a great sign, but I think we both had that same mentality is like, if you put me out there, I'm going to show you. And I remember the joke is, we'd get into a game and, whoever we're playing the Mississauga Ice Dogs. And, it was either me or Callie that started it first. And like, hey, Callie, these guys had 14 rounds to draft you. They didn't want you. And he'd say the same. They had 13 to draft you. They didn't want you either. And I said, okay, let's show them. And it was kind of a cool thing that I was able to draw from through the rest of my career is everybody's going to go through something like that. But for me, I can't say I planned it that way. I didn't necessarily get sad. It was kind of more of a revenge tour at that point, which was something that I think a lot of good athletes they gotta find some way. And for me, it was getting a little bit angry and showing them that they were wrong.
Yeah, I actually went through that and did the research of how many goalies were taken that year in your draft. For some reason on Elite Prospects, Dan Turple was taken twice by the same team. So we'll count it as 31. But it was crazy to see like how many guys before you were taken and did not have the OHL careers and get drafted like you did and go on to have the pro career. I think the only guy who was drafted yet him not playing and went on to have a good NHL career was, you know, obviously Al Montoya was one of the goalies that came to mind who played at Michigan there. But like that motivation, man. Like I love those stories. And obviously when you ended up making the jump there to Guelph, like you can tell that every year, like you had a little more fire under your skin. You wanted to prove to everyone that, you know, the 14th round pick wasn't
Mhm.
correct. And because of that, I think it helped you obviously in Guelph. You guys end up going to the Mem Cup that one year, and then the next year you end up getting traded to London and going to another Mem Cup. So um talk to me about that first Mem Cup run. Like obviously it's your first time doing it. Like how was that experience for you, and how did it help you also prepare for the next one the next year when you up going to London?
Yeah, well, I mean the first year, so we came out of my first year in the OHL, I was 17. Went through a coaching change mid-season. There was a lot of turnover, and then we really started to find our groove in the second half. We had a wonderful overage goalie, Andrew Penner, that I would still to this day consider one of my stronger mentors that I've had too. But we had a lot of guys that were coming into their second year and kind of hungry to do something. A new GM. Dave Barr, who was very motivated to, try and make a mark. And, all year it was kind of the London Knights and the Guelph Storm that were going head to head. I think we split the season series 3-3, and then we ended up beating them in the conference finals in game seven. So it was really a best of 13 over that year. And that will still be one of my more memorable playoff series. But I just remember that first time going to Kelowna and all the lights, and we lost the first game to Kelowna, the hosts, 1-0. And then we lost the second game 2-1. And then really by that point, your tournament's almost over. So it was a great experience to be there that first time. I think, getting the second chance to go back, which not many guys do. I was lucky enough to go with Dan Girardi. He got traded to London a week before I did. And I think that was the main message that we were able to pass along is like, guys, the goal is the Mem Cup. The OHL Championship's a stepping stone to get there. So let's not be too uh, proud of ourselves with the OHL. We still got work to do, and I think that was a huge benefit to our group just going into that. We had the OHL Championship as part of our Memorial Cup goals at that point, as opposed to let's see how far this that we could take this. We won the OHL when I was in Guelph, and it was almost tough to regroup after a championship, then get back on the bus a week later. And now again, to our previous question, find that motivation to do it all over again. But like I said, experience is something that I've really come to appreciate, which I don't think a lot of young players do. Well, how could they? They don't have any. But that was kind of the first time that I realized, okay, when you have this opportunity, if you're thoughtful about your craft, you can really make some gains if you get a second opportunity. And that's the one thing that, getting drafted in the 14th round, it's helped in so many ways. I think the best thing is we have an OHL draft, then our guys go through the NHL draft. And I think that, a lot of players will look at a snuff in one of those areas as the be all end all for their career. You're always going to get that chance to show them. So just show them. Like there's always that equalizer that you got to play the game.
I still remember the trade too when you went to London. Like obviously Ryan McDonald went back the other way from London, and I mean I would have to assume that the London GM there and coach, the Hunters there would have seen you the year before and seen how you were able to help a team get to the Mem Cup and obviously beat them, steal a series if you will, and obviously that competitiveness in you. Like you obviously were a gamer, you were a battler, you had that fieriness too, which I think made you the ultimate competitor. And I still remember I was at that Mem Cup in 2005, every game. And you guys had that sick team. Obviously, that was the NHL lockout year, so like Perry was there and all that. But maybe talk about that building. I think was a year or two old. It was sold out every night. The town obviously were with you guys there, and obviously at the end of the day, you're playing against Crosby and all of them. Like just talk about that whole experience and evidently winning the Mem Cup.
Yeah, well, yeah, I could tell you that that year it felt like the pressure never really ended because you mentioned the trade. I got traded to a team that had two goalies with like plus 940 save percentage, and I was supposed to come in and do better than that, and that was not an easy expectation to start off with. It was such a stacked team that really it was really tough not to go into a game with that mindset is that I can't screw this up. I can't be the guy that loses this, right? Because most nights we were out shooting teams, and then like when you've been in hockey enough, that's when you get a big. If the other goalie's standing on his head, you're going to get some sort of break coming down, and it's going to come down to you whether this game is going to be a flop or not. And I thought that that was a great experience for me that I could take through the rest of my career, but. It was a team that did not need me. They could have won without me. I was certainly honored to go there, and I think if anything, it's the Hunters never really wanted to leave any stone unturned, and I had some of my best hockey the previous year going into that year against the London Knights, and you'd have to ask them, but I think that there was an aspect that they didn't really want to play against some of the guys that they had played against prior, so. Um, Dan Girardi and myself had played a lot of games against the London Knights, so it was definitely awkward to join that dressing room after all those battles. But immediately you could see that there was a mutual respect and a common goal that the guys wanted to win. So we quickly squashed that past.
And when you did, obviously, as I mentioned, you guys end up winning the Mem Cup that year. And yeah, obviously for many junior players, especially in the major junior, like that's the ultimate goal. And for you, you win that championship, and then month later or whatever it is, a couple weeks later, you get drafted to the NHL. So I would say in a span of 2 months, it was quite the whirlwind for you being a champion and then also being an NHL draft pick.
Yeah, and you know what? I thought that that was a kind of a full circle moment because I had kind of given up on the draft at that point. I had been the year before, Danny Taylor and I were the goalies in Guelph. I had ended up playing all but two of the playoff games. We won the championship. I didn't get drafted. Danny Taylor did get drafted, so I was, kind of disgruntled again, but again, put it into my work. I got invited to Florida Panthers camp, and really that whole season, the draft was so far out of my purview that it was just let's go make some memories here, let's win some games, and that's something again, take that to our team right now, and everybody has individual goals, but when you can put a team like that and you can, reach the pinnacle in hockey, we had guys that were, point 0.3 points per game that were then signing and skipping overage years. It was the first time I wouldn't even say that was my best year in the OHL, but I got drafted that year. It's amazing what winning can do, and being part of those teams was something that was quite special. So, I wish it was something I could have learned earlier, but when you put all your efforts into the team and to winning hockey games, the individual goals, they individually start to get checked off.
Yeah, and then you end up playing one more year there. I remember the next year was you and Steve Mason, I believe, there, and you guys went to the OHL finals against Peterborough there. And then like to end your OHL career, man. Like I mean, like we're just gonna list off, obviously as you mentioned and I mentioned, you had two OHL titles, one Memorial Cup, one-time goalie of the year. I mean, solid career. I mean, for being a 14th round draft pick, kind of bringing it back to that, you proving people wrong and using that as motivation, I'd say that was a job well done. And then you end up making the jump to professional hockey. You obviously in Buffalo's system there, you end up playing 3 years in the AHL with Rochester and then Portland. Like, how was that adjustment for you? Because now you're going from being a 20-year-old in the OHL, 19-year-old in the OHL, playing with guys who are max 21 years old, to now you're playing with pros. Like you're playing with men, and I would think you would agree. Back then, like the older guys were men. Like nowadays, when I look at like the older guys, maybe it's because I'm older, I don't think of them as much men anymore. But back then, everyone had size, they were mean,
Yeah.
kind of that thing. So how was the adjustment and the jump for you?
Yeah, it was good. Like I really love the independence from living on your own. Now, I think that was probably my biggest adjustment too, because I would say that I would have been spoiled in my junior days, that billets that would have done a lot of things for me, laundry, cooking. So I went into that kind of useless, to be honest with you. Couldn't buy groceries. Well, I could buy groceries, but didn't really know have much direction in there. And then if you bought the groceries, you got to put them together into a meal, which was even tougher for me. So turned into a lot of eating out, a lot of things that are not beneficial for a pro hockey player. And that was certainly an adjustment for me. But I think the biggest thing that I found was, you go to junior hockey where any mistake you make, somebody's on you. They're going to tell you, hey, you can't do that. You got to go to bed earlier. You got to do this. Whereas pro, at least back when I was going through there wasn't much feedback. So you might not have been doing enough in the weight room. They were certainly taking notes of it, but you weren't getting that immediate feedback to get a kick in the butt to get going. So I think that I ended up having a good start to my AHL career. I got called up in my first year for a couple weeks. And then really, I'll be honest, the injuries started to kind of pile up. I had, after that Memorial Cup season, I had to get my knee repaired. That was 6 months of recovery. So went into the off season maybe without, I'd say probably just back to level. I wouldn't say I had the ability to make any gains. And then you jump into an 80 game season with, again, not the proper nutrition, things like that. The injuries really started to wear down. And, I remember just dealing with all sorts of things with the Buffalo trainers. At one point, they thought one leg was stronger than the other. So I had lifts going one skate. And ultimately, it felt like for a year and a half that I had a groin injury. So like, I managed to improve my numbers every year, but ultimately in the third year, I had to cut my season short in December and get my first hip surgery. So, flipping a little bit, it also felt like it was a different environment in the American League every single year. So first year, it was the first year that they were splitting with the Florida Panthers. So we had a really good team that year. We were getting lots of the bigger guys. The second year, both teams, Florida and Buffalo, went with the approach that they wanted all their younger prospects in the American League. That meant that our oldest guy was about 23. That year was really tough. We didn't win many games. We didn't have great pro habits. And I did feel like I was able to kind of salvage the year. I had some good starts towards the end. I'd say the starter in that season. And then the next year, Buffalo, to your point, I think decided that they needed their own affiliate, so they could bring in some of those older guys. So Florida ended up staying with Rochester, and the Buffalo Sabres ended up affiliating in Portland. So I don't think a lot of the listeners would really piece that together, but I didn't get traded. I didn't do anything, but the team moved affiliates, and that meant I had to get the moving truck again, drive to Portland, find an apartment, start over. But you know what? I really felt that was I was starting to have a really good season, starting to feel comfortable in the American League, kind of on that same pathway in the and in the OHL too. We brought in some older players like Tyler Bauk, Matthew Darsh, who's the GM with the Islanders now. And unfortunately, the injury put me out as of December, and it was about 3 weeks after I got hurt that Ryan Miller broke his thumb, and then Jonas Enroth benefited from the call up for the next 2 to 3 months, and he ran with it, and I was told, hey, get your surgery, everything's good, we want to get you back next year, and then I remember it very vividly. I was in all the contraptions that you have when you're getting hip surgery, and then the Sportsnet ticker says Adam Dennis has not been qualified by the Buffalo Sabres. So again, it was luckily I'd had a few experiences like this, so I was able to draw from, and that certainly motivated me a little bit more going into that rehab to get back and play again.
How is it like, going through that like mentally too? Like, you're obviously a person that doesn't let things get to you. Like as you said, you use it as motivation, but it's still at times it can be tough. And like, was your plan the next year like you wanted to, if the option was there to stay in North America, like maybe sign with another team and play in the AHL, like be healthy and try to keep going? Because obviously you end up going to Europe for 5 years there, and now being over in Europe myself, like I see a lot of guys come over now and they're like, man, I wish I did that earlier, blah, blah, blah. Like it's been great. But like for you, like, what was that maybe summer like, and what was the eventual decision to head to Italy?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess from a personal standpoint, I was really feeling like I was ready to take that next step. As I felt physically as good as I felt in a long time. Unfortunately, at that point, when you don't play until December, there wasn't a ton of offers for NHL deals. In fact, there was none. I think the best option was an American League East Coast deal, and it was Jonathan Quick was in. It was with the LA Kings. That Jonathan Quick was in the American League, and they had drafted Jonathan Bernier fifth overall. So I'd kind of seen some of the way things are gone, and maybe it was the wrong way of looking at it, but I just wanted to play, and I didn't want to go get up and down in the American League and basically be wherever the backup is needed. I wanted to make sure that I was, going to make the most out of my new hip and get some ice. So Rick Cornacchia is a longtime friend. He was coaching the Italian national team, and I have Italian heritage, so. When felt up to it, reached out to Rick, and he sent a quick note out to all the teams in Italy, said that he was going to help me get my passport, and that's when the FASA, I don't even know, HC FASA was the team that reached out. Steve Sterling was the coach at the time, who I had recognized the name. He had coached in the NHL, so it was appealing, and the most appealing thing about it is I could get on a plane tomorrow and start playing within a week. So jumped at it without really knowing much about it. That's probably another podcast, to be honest, that experience. But the best thing for me was it got me back to my roots, and I got to play hockey. The amenities were way less, but it really just got me back to just going and having fun playing the game again. And yeah, I'm so happy I did it.
Episode 2 we'll just go through your time in
Yeah.
Italy. Like I've been there, man. Like you come over to Europe and there's some places, you're treated great, and then there's other places where like the things that you think are normal that would be like given to you or provided by the team or not, and just things like the amount of stories like we probably both have together are pretty funny. But after that Italy year, like we mentioned, I mentioned you off pod, like you end up signing there in Cologne there, obviously, one of the top teams here in the DL that we're actually playing them tomorrow. Like I know like the experience was cut short. We've all been there. Like you go somewhere and things don't work out and you gotta make a switch. I mean, I think that's part of the hockey business. But how was your short amount of time there? And then evidently you end up going back to Italy and then playing the next couple of years there. And then also you've done something that's pretty cool, and that's represent country for the national team. So you've obviously played games for Team Italy there. So we'll shift to that part that secondly. But how was it like with your brief time there in Cologne?
Well, listen, yeah, I mean, you're not going to get much closer to the NHL as far as facility wise than some of those nice rinks in Germany. And going to Cologne, it was, I felt it was a step to potentially get back to North America. So I took the opportunity, and really, I thought I was doing okay. The team wasn't doing as well as we should have been. There was high expectations. And we got about 10 games into the season. I thought I was playing well. I had a 910 save percentage, which, doesn't exactly scream change the goalie, but obviously, it was a first introduction to the business in hockey. And you realize pretty quickly that when you can change the entire position with just one player move, that's a nice quick fix as opposed to changing five players or a coach. So one day we were getting ready for a road trip, and a goalie walks in and he's got a bag, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought we did so much promotional stuff. Maybe it's just somebody's getting a skate. And then when he was going around shaking hands, the name was Wade Dublowitz, which I remember because he was playing for the Islanders, who knocked out the Leafs, which are my favorite team. So I immediately said to myself that that's not good. Went and talked to the coach, and all he said to me is, "Yeah, you're not playing this weekend." So kind of went through it for a week or so. The team did not get any better. In fact, they kind of went worse. We were getting shelled. And, my instinct was, I'm just going to wait this out. They're going to come calling soon. But again, the coach was in a fight of his own, and it was just time to get back to playing. So that time, went back to Italy. Had quite a few suitors that were willing to open up some room for me in that league at that point, and that's when I just made the commitment that I was going to stick around Italy for a couple years, get my nationality, and let's see if we can represent the Italian national team here.
Which obviously you did, and just looking at your stats online, you did very well. Like you had in the games you played, you had good statistics, and obviously, were their guy. Maybe talk about some of the international tournaments you played at with them. Like, I know you played a couple of years for them. Like, was there anywhere that like stood out to you that you like remember?
Yeah, I mean the two big ones for me would be we were in the Olympic qualifiers, and it wasn't Bremerhaven, it was a DEL2 team. I can't remember the name of it right now, but Olympic qualifiers. So obviously that was a big pull, was to try and play in the World Championships, the Olympics, and we ended up. It was my birthday. We were playing Germany. Germany was by far the favorite to qualify from our group. I think it was Italy, Austria, Germany, and the Netherlands. So um, we went into that game, and it was one of my better games. We beat Germany 2-1 in overtime. Unfortunately, we lost to Austria 3-2. So we missed qualifying for the Olympics by 1 point, but I just remember that whole atmosphere. I became very popular when I went to Austria because of beating the German team in Austria going to the Olympics, that I had gained some fanfare before I went over there. So that was kind of cool. The other big one was I got to play in the Division Two World Championships in Budapest, Hungary, and just to play a game in Hungary in front of that, it was like 13,000 people in Budapest. We ended up playing Hungary for promotion, and that fan environment. They didn't sit down. In fact, they were jumping the whole game, so it felt like the place was in the middle of an earthquake. And then after every game, no matter what, they're throwing candy on the ice, and it was just a really cool experience. And to get promoted was something that was pretty special. And unfortunately, my second hip surgery came when we were going to compete in the A pool. But hey, that's hockey.
Yeah, I mean, the body can only hold up so much, and you must be like now looking at the Olympics being there this year, the Winter Olympics. Like you must be obviously a proud Italian, happy for the country that they're going to be able to, be there this year.
Yeah, you know what? It's cool to see for sure, and there's definitely been some guys that have been similar sh situations to myself that I've given my experience and helped them gain a spot over there. I think that there's so many players that have a lot of pride for that country, and I hope that they can start to get a little bit more funding because a lot of people don't realize Italy and Switzerland, 1985 would have been neck and neck in the hockey world. And I think in the Swiss, they've made that shift to allow all their local players to be professional. So that means that they can put all their time into becoming a hockey player, where when we were going to national tournaments in Italy, players had to take 3 weeks off work. So, there's that balance of your family life to trying to chase this dream. And, it's a different ball game when you're working a full job and then coming to your practice. So, I really hope they can compete in that tournament. I don't think what most of the hockey world realize what they're up against as far as, development opportunities, but, there is a lot of great athletes in Italy, and I certainly have some great friends from there, and hope that they can show what the Italian hockey world's all about.
Yeah, definitely rooting for them. And like you mentioned, like a lot of people would not know that, a country like Italy where, a lot of guys, the Italian guys are working full-time jobs and then having to go play hockey and it's like a second job, you know what I mean? And put their body through that and the long days and getting home late from a travel game on a Sunday and having to go get up at 6 to go to work. Like it's, you know, a lot of guys are spoiled in some countries and there it's like, they have the passion for the game and they love doing it, right?
It's perspective when you're complaining about a bike ride that you had to do when these guys are going to work and then they got to do the bike ride. So it makes it hard to complain.
No, definitely. But as you mentioned, you end up playing a couple of years there in Italy, and then you go to Dornbirn there in Austria, and then you know we talked about it off the pod. You explained the story really well, so you can explain it again. But like you're kind of in the middle. Like do I go back and play? Like you still had the ambition, the drive to play,
Mhm.
and this kind of being somewhere, having a conversation with someone led to something where it ends up changing your life and sending you on the next part of your life in terms of a career. So maybe talk about the year after Dornbirn there in the summer, and then how you ended up getting a job with the OHL.
Yeah, so I think for every hockey player, there comes a point where your body's just telling you it's time to maybe think about some other things to do. And I had my second hip surgery at the end of the season in Dornbirn, and had the option to go back to Dornbirn. Obviously, I needed this surgery, so the rehab took me until about December of the next year until I was fully ready to go back. So. I did have some options to go play, but again, your mind starts to wander in other aspects of your life. My current wife, we were engaged at the time, so obviously you start thinking about that aspect of your life as well. So really, it kind of was a perfect storm. The Memorial Cup that year was in London. It was 2014, and I had a couple teammates that were in similar positions to me where we were looking to make that transition into the next part of our lives. So we went to the Memorial Cup as fans, as alumni, but we really tried to make a point of being a bit professional and trying to network and get some contacts. So I was lucky enough, I ran into Dave Branch. And I was ready. I had a line. I said, Dave, it's great to see you again. I said, I was fortunate enough to have you hand that Memorial Cup over to our team, and you suspended me twice. So just wanted to reintroduce myself, and I know he got a kick out of that. We ended up talking for a little while, and he actually invited me to present an award at the OHL Awards at the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I jumped at the opportunity. As I was kind of going through my rehab, saw an internship at the OHL. I said, you know what do I got to lose? I just put my name in. They reached back and actually said, well, a full-time position has opened up. Kyle Raftis, who's the current GM in Sault Ste. Marie, was holding the position. He ended up getting the job when Kyle Dubas went on to the Leafs. And I applied for an internship and was immediately in an interview for the director of player recruitment. So going through that, balancing off, finishing up my school and then some of the offers from Europe. I was, probably 1 foot from boarding a plane to Milan to go play there, and got the call that I got the job at the league office. So quickly shifted gears and ended up jumping into the next phase, and very grateful for that opportunity. I think it was one that is a great foundational role. I got to reintroduce myself to so many people that I hadn't seen, and get educated in all the things that the OHL saw and what that perfect platform for a pro player would be. And things kind of snowballed from there. A couple years into that director of recruiting job, I didn't know many of the people in North Bay. When our current head coach, Ryan Houlihan, got the job in Flint for his first head coaching job, I was called and asked to be an assistant coach. And that kind of started the next chapter there. So it's kind of cool how it snowballs, but that OHL experience and then going to that Memorial Cup just to see some friends and try to collect as many business cards as I could turned out to be a pretty fruitful trip.
It's actually quite amazing just how the networking and maybe being at the right place, right time, saying something to somebody might intrigue something. Like my story too is kind of the same like that. Like I obviously had finished playing. I started working, as you know, in the second leagues over here. Like you're getting paid for one job but doing seven and
Yep.
whatever, like just kind of working your way up. And I was 5 years into it, and I randomly ran into a GM at the time of Mannheim, and he said, "Yeah, what are you doing anything this weekend?" And I'm like, "No, not why?" And he goes, "Well, I'm going to the U18s in Switzerland. Like, do you want to come with me and
Hmm.
scout?" And so we spent a couple days together scouting, and by the end of that summer, that ended up landing me a job in Mannheim, which I had never, when I was working in the second league, I never thought like, I don't know if I'll get to the DEL ever, but let alone like such a prestigious club like Mannheim. And now here we are, three years later. So it's kind of the, as you said, like it's being able to network, being able to just kind of share your thoughts with somebody, and maybe someone gets intrigued and says, oh, we see something the same way, or like building a team
Hmm.
or whatever it might be, right? Um, One thing I don't want to skip too far ahead. Like obviously, as you mentioned, you started in North Bay as an assistant coach, assistant GM, and also goalie coach. So, man of many talents, as you know, the goalie guy, you can handle the assistant coach and goalie coaching job, but you eventually get promoted to being the general manager. And this is like, as I know, this is my goal one day. I would love to be a GM someday. Like this is where I have a lot of intrigue in this and curious about your take on everything. So you get promoted. Um, how do you step into that job right away? Like obviously you'd handled multiple positions, being an assistant coach and also GM, but like you step into this job, like do you feel you're ready? Do you already have a plan in kind of your head? Like, okay, this is how we've been building our team with the old GM. I kind of want to make these tweaks and this is how I see us going forward. Like, how was that for you?
Yeah, you know what? I'd say probably naively, I would have said that I was ready immediately out of playing. And then you start to get into it and you realize that you might not be as ready as you think. So I think the first exposure was just getting back into that director of recruiting job. Like I worked with all the OHL GMs just on, the top prospects for the upcoming draft, where they were at, how teams should focus their recruiting efforts. And I thought that was a great experience. And you could really start to see some of the complaints come in about certain programs over the others and what was liked about certain teams over others and things like that. So you could start to formulate, if I ever had the chance, here's what I'd do. When the opportunity with North Bay came, I knew that I wanted to be a part of a team and start as high as I could. I was offered a assistant coaching position, and I immediately said no, I don't want to coach. I didn't have really any experience. I hadn't even coached house league. The job available was assistant coach, so we ended up working it out that I could be assistant coach, assistant GM, and I'd say being thrown into the fire is an understatement. I was given the penalty kill right out of the gates. And that was scary, but it forced me to kind of call some contacts, try and figure out what the best penalty kill I could put together was. And then the rules kind of changed as you move around. I was on the coaching side for about 3 years, did the forwards, the D, the penalty kill, the goalies, and really just changing that whole, first 30 years of hockey as a goalie, where you get used to watching the puck a lot. Now I had to watch what this guy's doing when he's away from the puck, which was certainly an adjustment. So I thought I gained so much in that and just figuring out, really strengthening my hockey base. Um, I thought that was a great exposure. I was able to do some scouting early on and be a part of all the drafts. And then I was still involved in recruiting as well. So I got to hear exactly what the issues were from agents and players about our own program. And I think, when it all came to a head and I got the opportunity, you try and remember as many of those experiences, as a player, as an assistant coach. I was actually, there was a couple months where head coach had to take a leave too. So we were kind of thrust into that position. So I'd even say I have a little bit of head coaching experience, but everything kind of got pieced together. And I think I said it to you off the podcast as well, is when you can have continuity in a spot, you really, the season's going to be very similar next year. But where did we do well? Where didn't we? Did we have a good start? Did we really like our training camp? Maybe this road trip we can tweak. I thought just that experience and that continuity and being able to go into a season with for the most part, the same group and build as a group together was probably the most important thing. And that's kind of how I approached every single year is if I have a gap, I'd love to learn about it. And if we can get better in any way, why wouldn't we look at it? I think that it's something that everybody in hockey has to do internally. And luckily that you're always going to have a training camp, a trade deadline, a playoff. So when you go through it a few times, you certainly get the ability to plan with some forward thinking.
Yeah, you brought up a couple of good points there, which I obviously have questions for. The first one I want to get to you with is, when you were the GM or even now, like I'm sure you have conversations with the now GM about, team building, stuff like that. Like what types of players were you looking for as general manager of North Bay, and maybe like how were you looking to build your teams? Like what were the types of players you're looking for, maybe the core values that you guys instill in your program and want your players to show on the ice day to day. And also, obviously, as you know, in Major Junior, the communities are a huge part of these teams as well. But what types of teams were you looking to build, types of players to recruit?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the what I've learned the most in junior hockey is that Um, everybody has something to do. Some guys come in a little bit further ahead than others. If you give me coachability and competitiveness, we feel pretty confident that we can at least advance your game. So those are really the two biggest things. And I think being a good person, it's always going to be important. Like we're in a small community. If you're going to refuse to sign an autograph or look past that young kid that's looking up to you for a fist bump. I think that it's probably not going to be a fit for us. I think when you're in a tight-knit community, those things matter. They're what bring people to the rink. And ultimately, when you go and play at the NHL, you're not thinking about it the right way if you think that you just have to be a good hockey player to get that $1 million contract. So I want good people, I want, guys that are loyal to the team. I love winners. And really that compete, that coachability. I always say if you've got a kid that has good hockey IQ at, 14, 15, it probably just means he's listening to his coach. But I think when you've got somebody that is unequivocally gonna give you their trust and buy-in, I think that you can take that player a long way.
No, 100% agree. Obviously, as you know, you're dealing with such young athletes that, there's things that they're going to have to learn. And as long as they're giving you those core values that to start with, you can work with them and develop these other traits and obviously help them grow as individuals and as men because they are teenagers. But um, you've been very gracious with your time here. Obviously, as I said, now you were a GM for the team and now you're the president. I'm sure that gets even more responsibility, and obviously, me taking an hour of your day is a lot. So, last question for you here. I always end on this one. What is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give the younger generation out there?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think staying in the moment. I think it becomes so easy in hockey to see those guys that are a couple years ahead of you, and then you start to plan out your trajectory, right? Like, I need to be here by this age. I need to be here that by that age. I don't think what anybody realizes is all the uncontrollables that kind of go into that. So I think when you can stay in the moment, focus on today and how I can get better today, you end up to stack days on top of days. And the opportunity is going to come. Sometimes you got to be more patient than others, but if you continue to just focus on that day and getting better, when that opportunity does come, I think you're going to be a bit more ready for it. So that for me is the most important. And there's only so much you can control. So don't worry about the stuff you can't.
And don't worry about being a 14th round draft pick, as Adam Dennis would say. So,
Yes.
Denny, I appreciate you doing this. Obviously, it was great to go down memory lane with you. For the listeners out there, if anyone's in the North Bay area, go check out a game. I mean, it's great hockey. Obviously, the community supports that team very well. And yeah, man, best of luck the rest of the way. And very happy that you've stayed involved in the game and definitely, worked your way up in North Bay there. And I'm very excited for what the future brings for you.
No, it's great to catch up. I had a lot of fun talking. I wish I didn't have to run right now, but keep going, Hersey. It's great to see all the success that you've had, and hope we can do this again sometime. Happy to be a friend of the show.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and we'll have to do an episode two, maybe off the clock there. But yeah, thanks again. And for those listening, cheers and ciao.